Good morning. My name is Kelly Hodge, and welcome to Parent University and the second workshop in our Budget 101 series. We have today Renee Arcus, our Executive Director of Fiscal Service, with us to bring you information about LBUSD's revenue sources, expenditures, and also discuss common myths and facts around school district budgets. We also have with us today Robert Tagorda, Executive Director of Equity, Access, and College Career Readiness. We do thank you for tuning in today. If it is at a later date, thank you on a recording. Thank you for finding us on our Parent University YouTube channel. We also just want to let you know during the presentation, if you do have questions, down below this screen, you can find a Google form where you can type in your question. We also have a link to the first Budget 101 series that we had a couple of weeks ago for your reference. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Mr. Tagorda, the Executive Director, and then he'll be passing it off to Ms. Renee Arcus. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thanks to our entire Parent University team, our translators who are providing this presentation in Spanish and Khmer, and to our multimedia services team for collaborating on this really important workshop that supports our parents and our community in understanding what our district budget is like. We recognize that this is a very important topic. It was suggested to us by members of the community and by parents who wanted to understand more what kinds of resources the district had to ensure that students are successful, particularly during this pandemic. So in the last Budget 101 session, we invited our Assistant Director, James Suarez, to provide a glimpse into what school-based decision-making is like. Today, we're going to take a 30,000-foot level and try to gain a better understanding of how our school system overall makes decisions regarding its fiscal resources. So we're grateful to Renee and to the entire budget team for collaborating with us on presenting this information to you. We also wanted to let you know that this is a preface to the planning process we're engaging in with all of our stakeholders during the spring semester, namely, as we develop what we call our local control and accountability plan. This is a document that explains our goals, our actions, our services, our expenditures to ensure that our students are successful, particularly our low-income students, our English learners, and our foster youth. This is a state requirement. It is something that our Board of Education has to approve alongside the district budget. So as we engage you and ask for your feedback on this important document, we wanted to ensure that you were equipped with information to be able to help us make informed decisions. So with that, I'd like to turn it over now to Renee. Thanks again for collaborating with us, and we look forward to your questions and to your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Robert. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can start to share some more information about the budget process. Just giving it one moment to get up there. First of all, I want to welcome everyone here today that is interested in learning about district budgeting. This course has been created to provide a very high-level view of our budget here at Long Beach Unified. I'm hoping that each and every one of you can walk away with a better understanding of where our revenue comes from and what expenditures we experience on the norm. That being said, we have all been experiencing this past year of COVID, where nothing seems to be on the norm. So there will be some experiences that may get described that are through the lens of the current situation and that affect the budget at large. I plan on including some information on additional programs that we support, such as adult education, our child development centers, nutrition, and capital services as well. However, I will spend most of our time here together focused on our general fund budget, which supports all of the daily activities of serving our K through 12 students. I just want to share a slide that provides our listeners today with Long Beach Unified mission to support the personal and intellectual success of every student every day. The fiscal aspect of actually developing a budget is driven with this mission in mind. In addition, our business department has come up with a mission that's on the next slide to further explain our role. This is the Business and Finance Services mission. Our business department supports a variety of areas, and you can see even more clearly here that fiscal responsibility is of the utmost importance, of which I hope you will gather from my presentation today. Our mission to support student success by providing reliable, responsive, and high-quality services which promote operational efficiency, fiscal responsibility, and public accountability. I'm going to start today's presentation with some information about the revenue or the income for our district. I will walk you through some slides that provide the where, the how, and why regarding how we receive our district funding. There are some complex funding sources that I will try to break down into smaller areas so that we can walk away with a better understanding of who gives us our money, how it is earned, and what control we as a district have over the resources that are given. Let's first start with the largest source of revenue for our district in the general fund. This is the local control funding formula, or LCFF, as I will refer to it from here on. This funding source is approximately 75% of our district general fund revenue. This particular funding source replaced the revenue limit process for receiving funds back in 2013-2014. It was a gradual process of funding from the state, and in 1819, we became fully funded. This funding source is based specifically on our student attendance and our percent of unduplicated pupil count. I'll share a little bit more about that later. Next, approximately 12% of our funds come from state funding sources specific to the state of California funding support. Some areas that you may have heard of before or may be familiar with include lottery funds and our special ed funding. But the state also provides grant awards that fund things such as our after-school programs, our career tech activities, amongst many other things. The district also receives approximately 12% of our funding from federal funding sources. These funds, again, thinking back to the presentation that we just had before, include resources such as Title I or additional special ed resources. And most notable that I think has been in the news everywhere is the CARES Act funding that has been widely discussed this year. Finally, we receive less than 2% of our revenue from local sources. This would include gifts from our PTAs, from our local businesses, local grants where we apply to local agencies for grant funding, and interest earned on our balances. Some local revenues could even be received from our operating of programs, such as our Kids Club program. I want you to keep in mind that these funding levels and percentages are based on our current projections for this year. These revenue sources can vary dramatically depending on the state and federal resources and any local contributions. For example, 2 years ago, the CARES Act funding provided for COVID relief would not have even existed. Now, I want to bring your attention back to the top, the LCFF funding. Since this provides approximately 75% of our general funding this year, I'm going to go a little deeper and share additional information. This slide provides a clear picture of our district enrollment for over 10 years in the past as current and multi-year projections regarding where we're headed. The projections are just that, estimates of where we think we are headed in terms of the number of students that we will be supporting. Our history has provided us with an estimated 2% loss in students year over year. However, this year, we lost a little over 3% of our enrolled students. Now, if you will remember from my slide before, enrollment and in effect, the attendance of these enrolled students is a major driver of the revenue that we receive for our LCFF funds. Just on the natural, with no intervention from the state, we are slated to lose revenue each year wholly based on the attendance of our students. There are two main takeaways from this slide. Revenue from our state will naturally decline as long as our student population continues to decline. And if I can talk to all the parents out there, student attendance is paramount to keeping whatever funds we have. Let's get our students to school. So the second part two of the funding sources that we receive for LCFF revolves around additional funding that we receive for at-risk students. So very simply put, if we receive a certain dollar amount for a student in first grade, that dollar amount becomes enhanced with additional dollars if we identify our students to the state as part of our at-risk population. The funding is based on identifying English learners, low-income students, and foster youth. These funds are then identified in our local control and accountability plan that Robert just spoke of, known as the LCAP. Let me share just a little bit more about this funding on our next slide. Those funds that come from our students are called the Supplemental and Concentration Grant. This year and previous years, this makes up about $118 million of our LCFF funding. So let me be clear. This is not additional funding. This is part of the funding that we spoke about earlier that is carved out and reported independently in our local control and accountability plan, or LCAP. These funds are specifically calculated by our percentage of students that qualify. We use meal application status, income verification forms, and we receive information on direct certification through state programs. The entire count of this population is divided by the total number of students, and our percentage is determined. The higher the percentage, the higher the amount of funding that we can receive in support of these students. So now that you've heard everything regarding our general fund revenue for the year, I've prepared a graph to show you the ups and downs of our revenues over the last 7 years with a total 10-year outlook. You can see some trends regarding the information that I gave you before. We were steadily on the rise from the 14-15 implementation of the LCFF funding to an all-time high at full implementation in 18-19. Then you can see the trend take on a downward slope as we started to experience the real effect of the loss of our enrollment and the shift in our unduplicated pupil count. Due to some state regulations surrounding COVID, we are going to see a safety net in 21-22, and that we are not going to experience the full loss of our enrollment drop until 2022-23, when we begin to see the effect of enrollment loss in our future years. I'm going to show you a little bit more of a full picture a little further in the presentation. However, I feel I would be remiss if I left out some revenue information regarding our other revenue sources that support programs such as our adult education, where students can earn a high school diploma, high school equivalency certificate, learn about jobs, and learn to speak English. Our child development program that centers around early childhood learning with CDC and Head Start programs at the focus provide program access through state and federal programs to children aged birth to 12. Our nutrition services funding is also state and federal focused, and it provides nutrition meals to our students and the community. Finally, a large portion of our other revenue is received for capital expenditures throughout the district. This includes bonds funds voted on by all of us in the community. On many occasions, we have also applied for and received state matching funds to stretch our dollars even further. Hopefully, this has given you a great sense of the revenue sources that the district receives and where we get them from. So before I move on to district expenditures, I want to check in and see if we have any questions out there or if I should just keep going.
Hi, Renee. Thank you for checking in. We don't have any questions at this point. I think you're just doing such a great job clearly explaining and going slow for our listeners.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for letting me know. So I've given you the revenue side of the house. This slide will be the beginning information to spend some time going over our expenditure categories. As our biggest operation fund is the general fund, I've included the current projected information for this school year to add some context. On this slide, I'm spending time referring to the cost of our personnel. This is broken down further into certificated salaries, which are personnel with a credential. Think about who you see on your campus with your kids, teachers, counselors, principals, nurses. This is where we'll represent those costs. The second category of expenditures relates more to our support staff, the people that you will also see at your site, but will be directly in charge of the education of your students. Think of our lovely custodians, secretaries, maintenance staff. Finally, we have broken down into a separate section the label that labels the benefits that our employees receive. Just like any company, we have to pay certain benefits on behalf of our employees. This category includes retirement costs, the cost of providing health and welfare benefits, and other items such as unemployment and workers' compensation insurance. All costs of having employees. In this sample year I've provided, you can see 83.3% of expenditures are for salaries and benefits. This is very close to the ratio that most districts spend on their people. Let's take a moment to talk about the purchases that we make. Along with people, we have purchases for supplies and operations. So for our system, purchases are broken down into three main categories: books and supplies, services and other operating expenditures, and capital outlay. As you can see above, I have provided some very specific examples of the type of expenditures made in these categories. Think of things that are required to operate a business. Things that come to mind are supplies, utilities, equipment purchases. As you can see, this is where we include all of those categories of expenditures. Again, these expenditures are related to this year's expenditures, but can change dramatically depending on the type of year and the type of funding that we receive. This year has been provided for informational purposes, and the purchases in this sample year are about 16.7% of the expenditure budget. So now that you've heard everything regarding our general fund expenditures for the year, I've prepared a second graph to show you the ups and downs of our expenditures over the last 7 years, with a future projection for the next 3 years, a total of a 10-year outlook. You can see some trends regarding the information that I gave you before. We were steadily on the rise from 14-15 implementation of the LCFF funding to an all-time high at full implementation in 18-19. Again, we were following the path of our revenue. But no, just a year before in 17-18, with the information available that revenues would be declining, as a district, we were able to start making changes to our operations to reflect the decline in funding that was on the horizon. While we continue to monitor expenditures and revenue sources, we do have increases that are out of our control, including items such as the increased costs of employee benefits, health and welfare costs, and what we call here step and column. Step and column refers to the salary schedule that Long Beach Unified School District uses, that each employee is on, that increases with their time here at the district. And in the case of our certificated personnel, the salaries can increase also based on education. So in addition to the same increases that you may receive at home, such as utilities, gas prices, and other purchases that are set to increase over time as well, just the cost of buying a new car, for example. These are things that the district as a whole experiences. So let me put these two graphs that I provided separately together to show you what our general fund looks like in our projections. Here's an abbreviated version of our general fund unrestricted budget. I have overlaid the two charts together. The blue line represents the declining revenue, and the orange line represents the increasing expenditures. So what does this mean? This means that we have done an excellent job over the years of managing our expenditures. And it doesn't mean that we aren't planning on doing a good job in the future. This just provides us with a goal to monitor these expenditures and revenues and to make changes as we feel is needed. We would also have some fund balance, or if you were to refer in your personal life, a savings account, if you will, if I'm likening this to our own home budgets. This allows us some cushion to navigate our next steps. So as we look at the cross of lines in 21-22, where our expenditures start to exceed our revenue, we can definitely see that there are things that we can change or changes that we can make in our expenditures for savings. And we can see the past few years, we've had a gap. We've had a little more revenue than expenditures, and that money can carry us through as we make these changes. The next 4 slides are additional pictures of our other funds that I spoke of earlier. Again, I've concentrated on our general fund because that is where we operate our K-12 budget. However, this particular slide represents the operating fund's revenue for our entire district, including general fund, the adult education fund, child development fund, and the cafeteria fund from our current adopted budget this year. This is our opportunity to view our items at a very high level. On the same coin, I want to provide this particular slide that represents our operating fund expenditures of our district, also including the general fund, the adult education fund, the child development fund, and the cafeteria fund from our adopted budget this year. This is an opportunity to view these items at a very high level and see where we spend in the big picture by category for our budget, for our operating budget. We divided them in the same manner that I described in the slides above, with all of the salaries and benefits and the different supply categories. Last but not least, I want to provide some information on our capital funds. These funds lay out the budgeted revenue for this year. It is important to note that this year we did not receive any bond funding. While as a community, we vote on a particular bond, we will only pull down the bond at the times that we need it. So once we pull down some bond funds, we will be able to utilize those funds for a few years. So this revenue that I'm representing here today is basically some interest revenue and some small revenues we receive from other areas to help support our capital expenditures. Expenditures related to these funds include our bond projects. And this is where you can see that we have spent far more than we brought in for this year. We have about 170 million, and our last slide was about 12 million in revenue. That's okay, because we've pulled down some bond funds about 2 years prior, and we're still utilizing those funds. And we're very specific in making sure that we do not pull down any additional funds for bonds until we absolutely need them to maintain our project tracking and to continue on with our bond projects. So hopefully that was able to give everyone a little more information on how we project our revenue and how we spend in our expenditures. What I'd like to take a little time on right now is some district reporting requirements. I'd like to let you guys know who monitors and sees our budget and where you have the opportunity to also be someone that can see the information and provide this support. I want to take a moment to give you some data surrounding our reporting process. We have a year-round process where we report on budgets, actuals, and audited information. I'm going to show you in a slide later where all of these items are available for your viewing pleasure. Here we are starting in June with our budget development. This June that you see on the screen is actually for the upcoming year. And the estimated actuals, which fall below the budget in our slide presentation, are actually what we are estimating that our final numbers will be once we close out the current year. By September, we will have what's called our unaudited actuals, which is representative of our final activities for the prior year. Although the fiscal year ended on June 30th, we have to wait until all payments is posted, all revenue is posted, in order to officially close our books. So we have a mandatory time that we have to present our books to the board in September each year. Following that presentation, in December, we have a mandatory annual audit from an outside firm. We work with them and provide backup documentation and explanations for any items that they are looking for. They do things such as check to make sure vendor payments are correct, that people were paid correctly, the bond monies were spent appropriately. They check that we have coded the people to the appropriate places. And what they do in December is bring our final audit report for the year before to our board. At the same time, we have our first interim in December. During first interim, we check to see if the budget that we've developed in June is on course, or if we've had changes, if we predict any changes. Notable changes will now be included in our interim reporting. For example, we had to monitor very closely this year. Due to COVID, we were monitoring our expenditures and our revenues and for possible changes to them so that we could report a better picture in the December timeframe. We just recently concluded our second interim reporting. This is our second look at potential changes to our final revenue and expenditures. With COVID, the changes in federal funding through the CARES Act, schools closing and the school reopening process, purchasing PPE or personal protective equipment, making schools safe for return, have been ever evolving, and we have required us to closely monitor expenses and change our projections at each turn that we're offered. These official reports are required by the County Office of Ed and our State Department of Ed. And again, if you look at the cycle on the page, just when we've now finished doing our second interim reporting in March, we are preparing to, number one, look at what our budget will be for the 21-22 school year, and preparing to look at what we think the year will end at. And we will bring this back to our board in June of 2021. Let's take a look at the requirements of who needs to see this and in what order. So who reviews and approves our budget? Here's a breakdown of who reviews and approves our budget. We adopt our budget each year, which is approved at the local level by our Board of Education. The county superintendents, which for us is our Los Angeles County Office of Education, are responsible for examining the budget and providing feedback. Finally, the state superintendent examined the budgets as well. The budgets are examined for compliance with state-adopted criteria and standards, to identify technical corrections needed, and to determine whether the budgets will allow the local education agency, which is us, to meet our budget for the year and multi-year financial commitment dates. Budgets must be approved or disapproved by specific dates. As promised, I want to show you where you have the ability to find all of these exciting documents that I've described here. Here is the screen, what the screen looks like in our on our website, but I want to take a small moment to show you how to get here. When you sign on to lbschools.net, this is what you should see. If you take a moment to go to the A to Z index and you choose B for budget, you're going to move slowly down and you're going to find a location called Budget Documents for the district. These are our financial documents that I just got through discussing. We've got our adopted budget for the state and by each fiscal year. We have the last 3 years here. We have an annual audit report, as well as I spoke directly about the fact that we do an audit report specifically for our Measure K and our Measure E bond funds. We have our second interim report that I spoke of, first interim report, and our unaudited actuals. Every document that I spoke about is here on this page. Even further, there's additional reports. There's an option to look at our CARES Act plan to date. And if you go one step further and check on the archives, I'll go ahead and do that. You can see that we have adopted budgets, audits, county letter of comments, first interim budget, second interim budget, unaudited actuals for several years archived for your viewing pleasure. So again, if you go to our regular website, choose A to Z index, choose B for budget, and check budget documents, you have an opportunity to see a lot of information about our district. I want to leave you with a little bit of a fun activity that I like to call myth busting. So as a financial person, I do hear a lot of information out in the community about what things, how things are represented in the budget or what may come up. So let me give you a couple myths and some facts. I hear a lot, especially with the California lottery, that the lottery funds will save the day. That, wow, the amount of money that we spend on lottery activity, we should definitely have some savings or some money coming to our schools. That's what they report. Just to give you an idea, the lottery funds for our district will make up less than 1.5% of the funding for our LBUSD general fund. It's nothing to shake our heads at. It's approximately $14 million in recent years. It too is based on the number of students that we have in our system, so it has been steadily declining, and it's based on $1 per student that on years has gone up. So we're grateful for these funds and we want to continue to receive these funds, but these aren't necessarily the funds that are driving the major activities of our district. So many of you may have heard of or may not have heard of what's called a cost of living adjustment, or a COLA, and an increase to this will offset our increased expenditures. Well, let me explain a little further. The COLA is given by the state of California on those funds that I spent a lot of time talking about before, the LCFF funds. So if they give $100 per student, on some occasions, they may provide us with a COLA. And they may say, we're going to give you a 1% increase. So that $100 per student could become $101 in that year. And many times it's thought, well, if we get a COLA on these funds, that should cover all of those other costs that Renee talked about. I talked about costs related to employees and just ever increasing costs related to retirement or health and welfare, keeping the lights on, our utilities, our gas bills. However, while a typical COLA has been nothing but typical in these last few years, more recently, we've gotten in the 1 to 2 range. Our costs tend to go up more than the COLA can hold on to. That's also taking into account that we have decreasing enrollment. So if you can imagine the win of having more dollars per student, but having less students, there is going to be some kind of give and take on that. So even a large COLA on state revenues does not cover ever increasing costs and the loss of funding due to declining enrollment. That's why we take so much time to monitor and look at all of those things. Finally, another thing that I hear is that budget cuts can be made entirely from supplies or maybe our operating expenses. So if you remember, I talked about those a little earlier. Our supplies and operating expenses, which is their paper, pens, utilities, contracts, make up about 17% of our entire expenditure budget. So really, that's not where we can go if we need to make, if there's any time that we need to look at budget cuts. Most of our budget is in our salaries and benefits. So here's what we do. We look at employee attrition. Just on the natural, we do have employees' retirements. That is a savings for the number of students that we lose each year. We don't necessarily have to always go to our salaries and benefits. We have options of looking at things that we can take care of, like supplies and operating expenses. But on the natural, we do have to have a look at what we spend on our people as we go throughout the years. So hopefully this myth busting has left you with a few more questions or a few things to think about when you're thinking about the school district budget. And really, I just want to thank everyone for attending today. I want to thank our parent university team, our media team, and our translation services. And if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Hi, Renee. I just want to say thank you so much. I've been an employee in this district, I think 17 years now. I lose track. And I've never had that overview. So I'm sure it was very helpful to everyone who was watching to get them started. We actually had just one question, but that individual did not leave contact information. It is a parent from one of our K-8s. And I'm just going to say to them, your question regarding the type of food that's offered at our school sites, I would recommend that you contact nutrition services directly regarding that question. And then Renee, the other comment that we had a parent from Cabrillo that said, thank you for the information.
That's wonderful to hear.
And that's what we was. So, and I'm thinking too, it's a lot of information to kind of take in. So perhaps over time. But with that said, thank you so much for joining us today, Renee, and bringing this information to our viewers. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.